Good afternoon, guys. It's Monday, and this week we're going to dive into toxic codependent habit components. The things we do as codependents that are actually harmful or toxic to our relationships. Some of these we've inherited from the narcissist. We model some of that. And some of them we've picked up as part of the navigation strategy we created to survive the neglect and the abuse we were going through. Today I want to focus specifically on one called controlling behaviors. Now, a little premise here with these things, with this idea of toxic behaviors and things like that. Hi, Jamie. It's been a while. We need to connect. We did not do these things to harm people. We're not being deliberately toxic. What it is that this is how we had to navigate a toxic system, so that if there's any kind of shame or guilt that shows up in this, give yourself a chance, a permission to let it go. You don't have to internalize it. You don't have to be a part of it. You don't have to carry it on anymore, because when we realize that we are better than a particular behavior, or we deserve better, then we can do better, and that's all that really matters. Okay, so none of this is about, none of this theme about toxic components, codependency, are about shaming or about judging ourselves. It's really about going, okay, well, I'm doing that. Well, what can I do instead? So today it's about controlling behaviors. And the whole goal of controlling someone's behavior is to get a particular outcome so that we get a particular need met. Okay? The whole premise of codependency is trying to get our need for love and belonging and acceptance met. Well, controlling people is one way we try to secure that so that we can alleviate the anxiety we feel about uncertainty, the anxiety that comes with our lack of distrust of the other person, our lack of trust that we have any value, that somebody would keep us because of who we are, that kind of thing. So it's very important to understand that that's what's going on behind all of our codependent coping skills, is that we're trying to get a need met. So there's a lot of compassion in that point of view, and I'd encourage you to explore it from that angle. It's like, what need do I want? Or what's my need and how do I want to get it met? So controlling behaviors show up as very subtle things. Sometimes it's controlling how another person expresses themselves, or it's controlling the dialogue. You speak for them when someone has asked them a particular question. You interrupt and say, well, they like or they think. We don't allow them to talk. I had a horrible habit at this. Oh, it was awful. And so we have that kind of habit that gets in on that. So we are coaching others in what we want them to say so that we feel more secure in what's going on in the discussion. Another thing we do, and I call that speaking for others, coaching them. Another thing we do, it's called unilateral decisions. We just make up our mind and then go and do it. And then people find out we made up our mind about it. We don't include people in decisions that actually affect them. And this is highly undermining to confidence, to intimacy, to trust in the relationship. And especially this tends to show up a lot when we are very scared about saying yes or no or asking for something. We're just going to make a decision and people are going to have to live with it, kind of thing. There's very few decisions in life, in a relationship, that fall in a unilateral category. Most of them need to be discussed in the relationship because it does affect the other person. But that doesn't mean our decision or our desire is wrong or bad. It's really more about how can we make this work with us, with the relationship. Just an example of a positive unilateral decision. If you're going to end the relationship, you've made up your mind, it's over. That's a positive unilateral decision. You have the right to do that. Another kind of decision depends on context. It might have to do with money, or if you have children and it's not your partner's children, there might be decisions you're making there for those kids that don't necessarily require the input of the step-parent or anything like that. But generally, you want to avoid unilateral decisions. You want to discuss what you want. You want to be direct. You want to be clear. You do not want to be passive aggressive. Give people a chance to show up, to give them a chance to receive you, to see you, and to show their value. That creates intimacy, it creates trust, and it allows us to really have an active role in our relationship rather than trying to police it and control it. So Ero says, I'm realizing I relate to these behaviors. How do you acknowledge your flaws while feeling guilty and wanting to beat yourself up? Well, number one, this isn't a flaw. So that's a judgment that doesn't fit this. This is a skill. If we look at it as a skill, like, oh, I mastered the ability to control someone, neat, then it becomes a lot easier to reshape it, because now I can ask a different question. It's like, well, how do I want to be here? What kind of behavior would I like to incorporate in this? And in my own experience, especially since you're relating from the borderline personality point of view, I decided, hey, I want to treat people with as much respect and integrity as I can, so that I'm also treating myself with that respect and integrity. So I chose the value of courage and integrity, and that meant for me to get very plain and very direct. It was very uncomfortable, and still is sometimes, but it has worked out really well for me. So this isn't a flaw in who you are, Iru. This is not something that's wrong with who you are. This is simply a skill set issue. Adopt a different skill set, get different results. No biggie. Okay, so separate your worth from your behavior, and you go, oh, I'm better than this. I just need to learn to do it a slightly different way so I get better results. Pretty easy that way. I would let go of guilt, and I'm a big fan of remorse being exchanged for guilt, because remorse makes it about the impact I had on the other person, and it allows me to properly empathize with them, rather than guilt making about, oh, I did this wrong thing, I'm sorry. It's more like, hey, yeah, I stepped on your toe, or I screwed this up, and I'm sorry. I know how that, I imagine that's, you feel this way about it. I must have heard, or, that kind of thing, and here's how I'm going to change things, here's how I'm going to change it up for you. So that's a really rough example there. So another thing, beyond choosing things or making unilateral decisions, another one we do is we assume what they think, we assume what they feel. We do this in order to control reactions. So with like narcissistic or toxic people who are abusive, we became very good at anticipating these behaviors, and that allow us to create predictions in them, which connected us to specific actions that created outcomes that worked some of the time. So there was a lot of value in assuming what they would do. In healthy relationships, assumptions sabotage the ship. They're torpedoes. They put holes in trust. We're not able to see the person as they are and receive them. We're not able to show up as we are and be received. Okay, so like tonight, in Being You Brilliantly, that's what we're talking a lot about with value. It's showing up as we are and allowing ourselves to be received. That's where we really are able to connect. That's where love can happen. This is where the transaction or the experience of connection occurs. So let's not assume what anybody is feeling or wanting. Let's ask. And what asking does in this context is it shows a profound amount of respect and care and interest in how that person feels, what they're thinking, where they're coming from. And that impresses on them that we care about how they feel and who they are and what they want. And that's ultimately what we're going for, right, guys? Is that we want to express and communicate that we care about them. They matter to us. So rather than assume, ask. Anytime you find an assumption showing up, go to ask. Make a question out of it. All right, and the next one, which is we all do, and I'll talk about this more on a different video, is we avoid conflict. All right, let's not rock the boat. Let's be needless. This kind of thing is a form of controlling other people because we're, again, not giving them the chance to show up. We're not giving ourselves to show up either. We're not giving ourselves the chance to be us. Healthy, organic relationships bond a lot of times through misunderstanding. Because if there's a conflict and you care about how I feel in this conflict, whoa, wow, we have an immediate level of intimacy. It's like, dang, okay. Because we're not going towards being right and wrong. We're going towards understanding. And understanding only breeds more intimacy and more clarity about the relationship, about how you guys work together, and helps you define a path forward for each other. So beware of avoiding conflict. And then another way we try to control things is we assume the worst. Catastrophic thinking shows up. We do this a lot with situations, with the unknown, with the uncertainty in our lives. This is going to be one of the hardest things you work through. It's something I work through with frequently. I mean, you run your own business, you're always on that edge of the unknown. And it's important for us to start cultivating a curiosity about uncertainty and about that unknown, and bend it towards an abundant point of view that whatever happens is working for us. I know that can be hard to accept and hear. I still balk at that because a lot of shit happened out of that unknown that hurt, that took from my life, that altered my life. So it's okay to be reserved and to be a little skeptical. But what you're going to find is when you start to master the energy of curiosity, especially towards possibility for you, things start to happen that are unexpected. You start getting outcomes you've wanted. You start having solutions to problems show up, and you start discovering for yourself that life doesn't have to be so scary. So these are a couple of ways that we attempt to control people, places, and things through codependency. So if you're struggling with these, look at the opposite. Like if you want to control someone's feelings, ask them what their feelings are. Accept it. Make it safe to receive that awareness. If you're fearful of a rejection, give yourself permission to be rejected without discarding or judging yourself, and give yourself permission to reject others and give them permission to reject you if they choose to. Do the same approach with acceptance. Give them permission to accept you. Give you permission to be accepted, and give yourself permission to accept others without having to change yourself. These kinds of little questions and permission approaches help us up here get really real about what's going on for us in here. Okay? So, let's see. Iru says, oh dear, I assume a lot. I felt that big today. What I did was say to step back from reacting and step. Good job. See, good job. You've got this down, Iru. You're doing a good job. You step back out of the assumption and you assessed reality. Good work. Proud of you. Okay, guys. So tomorrow we're going to talk more about, let's see, what is it? Tomorrow, yeah, today's controlling habits. Tomorrow is how we regulate our value and our worth. So I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Thank you for being a part of the group. And remember, you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping. I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Bye-bye, guys.